Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. Welcome if you are new. My name is Heather. I'm a homeschooling mom of 3 kids in our 11th year homeschooling. If you are not subscribed, I would love for you to hit the subscribe button and notification bell so you are notified of all of my future videos. Today is part two of many of my 2022-2023 homeschool planning series. Now, honestly, this past week has been crazy for me for homeschool planning. I have spent so much time going through so many different lists that I have made and curriculum choices online. I did order a ton of stuff from Sunlight, and I'm not even sure if it is all stuff that I want to use this year or not. Thankfully, Sunlight has a great return policy. So if there are things that I know are not going to work, I can return them, I'm very thankful for that policy. I've never actually used it because I do find that we tend to use almost everything that I buy from Sunlight, but this year has been particularly difficult for me in homeschool planning. Just putting it out there. So I spent a lot of time researching and reading and researching and reading, and I came up with some different ideas of things that I wanted to buy. But today is really going to be about how I incorporate interest-led learning into my homeschool planning. So I pick all of our curriculum that I'm going to use for all of my kids, but then I also want to incorporate their interests. And this is something that I have been doing for as long as I can remember with my kids. I did a video about interest-led learning / passion projects that I've talked about a lot over the years and how I incorporate those things into our homeschool days. But I did want to kind of go through how I plan for interests in our homeschool year. So that's what I'm going to be talking about today. Now, interest-led learning is, I think, super important. I want my kids to be passionate about what they're learning because I find that they learn more and it stays with them if they actually like the topics. So, for instance, math can be a slog fest. You know, my kids are good at math, but it's not something that they really enjoy all that much. And so unless I'm able to give them real world examples, they could really care less about math. They get through it, but it's not all that fun. I don't want all of their learning to be like that. And that's part of why I want to incorporate a lot of their interests into our homeschool. And so as I start planning our new year, I do start to talk to my kids about things that they want to learn next year. And so every month, I talked about this a little bit in my last video about my monthly meetings and how I will ask my kids if there are things that they're interested in learning so that I can start looking for resources for those interests. Now, I do start my planning obviously very early. It is March 6th when I'm recording this, and I am already full on into thinking about next year. And so I do want to make sure that I have a list of things that the kids need to learn based on our homeschool laws. You really got to start there. If you can make some of your passion projects and interest-led learning fit into your homeschool law, that is great. Not every state is the same, and so make sure that you know what your laws are first before you start buying curriculum or resources to use for interest-led learning. So what I do is I start with a list. I will write on these lists things that I think they may be interested in and bring it up with them. And I also write things down that they come to me with. I'm not able to turn around immediately and provide them the resources they need for a specific thing. Sometimes, yes, if Emma needs help learning a specific thing to do in Adobe Animate, I can, find a YouTube video for that. But the overall Adobe Animate program, it takes a lot more for me to find tutorials and figure out a process to help her learn that. You know, you can't jump in at an expert level. You have to start at the beginning, and sometimes that can be a little more challenging when you're first learning something, especially for kids that maybe don't have the best attention spans. They may not stay as engaged, and so figuring out a way to deliver that information so that they continue with that interest, because you know that they will continue to want to do that thing, that's important. So a lot of my planning is list-based, if you if you were curious. So what I do is I talk to my kids each month and I say, what is it that you want to learn? What are the things that you're interested in? And then I write them down. And then I spend some time trying to figure out some different resources. I talked about this a little bit in that interest-led video about starting with no cost or low cost resources. Things like YouTube videos, things like documentaries on CuriosityStream. That's very low cost. It's only $20 for a year of streaming. I look for books at the library to explore some of those interests, some free classes that you can find online. It really just depends what the interest is, what the topic is. There, you know, Khan Academy has tons of free resources for computer coding. There's a lot of different free resources out there, and the level of the resource just expands as you get further into that interest. So I will make a list of things that my kids are interested in, and then I will continue coming to them and say, do you still want to do this thing, whatever it is? And if you do, I have a couple of books that you can look at to see if it's something that you want me to continue to research and find resources for. So for me, incorporating interest-led learning into our homeschool, the planning of that takes a lot of time. And maybe that's why I use Sunlight, so that I have all of my other curriculum easily laid out in front of me, because I spend a lot of time on this interest-led learning and finding the resources and the classes and how to go about incorporating it into our days. So this is what I'm working on right now, trying to figure out exactly what my kids want to learn for next year. I do not buy resources for interest-led learning until much later in my planning process. This is more just the exploration phase, similar to my part one, where I'm just jotting down things that I think the kids might be interested in. This is the time when I start to ask them about things that they are also interested in. Now, a lot of times there is actual crossover, and I think that's because I've spent, this is our 11th year homeschooling, so I have observed my kids a lot and what they really love to do and the things that maybe aren't as exciting to them. And so I do try to find resources and curriculum for the things that I know they need to learn and maybe aren't as exciting, to possibly line up more with something that they are excited about. And so just taking the time to write a list and work through that list to find resources. And then once you have started to go through some of those free resources, you will see if it's an interest that they will continue to have. If they are grabbing those books or wanting to work on a computer program or a class or something, if that is something that they are like, yes, I want to do this right now, you will know that you want to continue finding better resources for them to use, maybe more in-depth classes or more in-depth books, or even YouTube videos and stuff. You can still find a lot of free resources, but they are just more in depth. And so for us, when we start to get towards the end of our homeschool year, because we're year-round homeschoolers, we tend to finish up our curriculum at the end of March, usually, end of March, mid-April is typically when we're done with all of the resources that I had for this current year. And so we do take some time off, but that time between mid-April and the end of June, we are still doing learning, and it is mainly project-based learning where they are coming up with an interest and I am helping facilitate whatever that interest is, and they continue to work on it throughout the couple of months. And then that time is what helps me figure out if it's something that they are going to want to continue doing for 2022-2023 homeschool year. And if that's the case, then I do start to look for different resources. And I have a week in June where my kids are at Vacation Bible School and Emma volunteers and Jack and Lucy participate. And that is my week where I am all in on homeschool organization and planning and making sure I have everything ready for the start of our new homeschool year, which is usually the end of July. So if you are interested in interest-led learning or project-based learning, but you still want to have curriculum, that's okay. You do not have to throw away interest-led learning just because you're following a curriculum. I do take my kids' interests and ideas and things that they want to learn about. I take all of that into account when I'm planning our homeschool year. So that's why this year has been a little bit harder because Emma is full on in high school and I'm trying to make sure that I am doing the things that she needs to be able to go to college, but also incorporate the things that she is interested in, and figuring out how to do that with course descriptions and transcripts. It's a little bit more challenging it's not challenging, it just takes time. And so I want to make sure that I am incorporating those interests because, like I've said in so many videos, love of learning is one of the top priorities of my homeschool. I want my kids to learn what they think is important. I want them to learn what I think is important as well, but I want to present it in a way that is engaging for them. And so that's kind of how I incorporate interest-led into our basic subjects, as well as drawing that into then their projects that they are also interested in. So that is what I'm focusing on for the next several weeks. I will be working on some of the things that my kids are interested in and just looking for resources, especially free resources. Again, things like YouTube videos, CuriosityStream, the library, obviously a great place to find out more information about a specific thing. Khan Academy is great. Because, well, specifically for coding classes, they have a lot of coding, which is something that Jack is really interested in. Sometimes it's just going to the library or going to like Barnes and Noble and browsing to see some things that maybe are interesting. Some things are homestead based in our home. Jack loves gardening with me, and so he spends a lot of time with me planning out our garden and then planting our garden and doing the outside work with me because that's something that he's interested in. So, just writing down the list so that you can explore it as the facilitator of your child's interests, as the mentor of your child's interests, and help give them some ideas on how to figure out if they want to continue with this interest, how to help them focus on a specific project, because you have to realize that kids don't have these skills yet. And sometimes they're not even skills that I am able to say that I have. So giving them the resources is great, but also having you be able to facilitate those resources for your child is also very important. And so it takes a little bit of time for you to familiarize yourself with the resources so that your kids are getting the most out of it. Maybe they don't need to read straight through a book. Maybe they just need to work on a couple of little projects, or maybe your child is really passionate about art, and so you are finding different techniques that you may not know. I don't know anything about art, but Emma is a great artist, and Jack does a great job too. So finding those resources and other mentors that can help them with their interests is important. So writing down the interest, have a conversation with your kids, observe what they want to do in their free time when you are not actively involved with their, daily life. What are the things that they are turning to in their free time? Is that something that you can turn into an educational opportunity? Not everything has to be an educational opportunity, but I find that it's easier to deliver that love of learning and share that love of learning with my kids when I show them that their passions can also be learning. That even includes video games. Jack loves video games, and he has spent a large amount of time learning how to create video games with Unreal Engine. So you take that passion and you put it into something productive, and maybe it will lead to something in the future that is great for them. So that is part 2 right now. I'm working on interest-led project-based learning right now. What are the things that my kids want to work on next year? What are the things that they are hoping to learn more about? And seeing if it's something that I can facilitate and mentor them through and give them sort of a strategy of the next steps so that we have an idea of a direction to go and it's not just a free-for-all, which sometimes is okay. And I don't make every interest into an educational project, but if it is something that translates easily or that I can see the educational value in, and a lot of it I can see the educational value in, I want to make sure that I am able to give them the steps they need to go through that interest, learn what they need to, and either progress further in that interest and concentration or project, or let it go and just say this was a fun little project that we did as part of our homeschool. So if you have questions about what the heck I'm doing, let me know in the comments, or you can always contact me. My contact form is in the description box. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up, and I will see you in the next one. Thanks, guys. Bye.